Hi there, students. I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, 'cause that's what I am. I'm a Puppy-sensei VTuber, and I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities, and I do other fun stuff too. For instance, I'm also a professional translator, and I have translated for a couple different companies over the years. I've done translation, I've done interpretation. The difference between these two things, right? That may be something that you want to know right off the bat. What is translation? Translation is when you go from one language to another language and you're doing it in paper format. You're doing it because there's some kind of text, right? And usually that's a process that takes more time than anything else, right? It's just time and devotion and looking at it and going this turn one thing into another. But interpretation is when you are actually talking to somebody, so you may have an English speaker on one side and a Japanese speaker on another side, and you have to work to get their language and their point across in the best way possible, right? So interpretation is a very stressful job. I've done interpretation in situations where it was like 20 or 30 English speakers and 20 or 30 Japanese speakers, and they all wanted to communicate with one another, and they were all kind of looking at me, wanting to interpret their things. I've done medical interpretation, which is not fun, and I don't recommend it at all. You know, the thing about being in any kind of medical situation is that people aren't happy. Like, if they're sick, they're intrinsically unhappy. And so, that's one of those situations where you are usually interpreting for somebody and they're like, oh, my leg has half fallen out off, and I need to get a doctor to explain, what's going on because my leg is gone. And then you're and then you're in the situation, the unenviable situation, to have to tell people how they're going to make it through this situation. So, um, what I do more than anything else is usually document translation. I do a lot of technical translation where I'll look at some kind of like technical specs or something like that, and then I'll usually interpret that, either going from Japanese to English or English to Japanese, because those are the two languages that I know the best. Um, those of you who know me a little bit know that I have also taken a couple other languages. I lived in China for a while, so I know a little bit of Chinese, but not enough that I would say that I am really capable of like giving a polished, good Chinese translation. Um, I also lived in Slovakia for a little bit and taught Japanese there, which is a really wild, pretty wacky story. But I like languages. I do really enjoy linguistics. I'm really into that. It's fun. It's fun to think about language and communication, and there are reasons why that's pretty important to me that I kind of won't really get into. But um, anyway, what we're going to be doing today is I translated the subtitles for JoCat's newest video, which is really amazing. Um, his video is all about his trip to Japan, and he was in Japan with Echo, who is now, like, I think according to this, per the video, I think that they are affianced. They got engaged on the trip, and that's part of the video. So I guess spoilers for later in the video when we watch it together. But what I want to do today is just watch the video. From time to time, I'm going to pause and just talk about the process that I went through as I was translating, the things that were on my mind, some of the things that I found like really difficult to translate, things that I really had to think about, like stretch my muscles a little bit. Um, but mostly, I just kind of want to just enjoy the video together because it's such a really like super touching, super sweet video. I wasn't anticipating it, so when I agreed to do this, like, I'll be completely honest and say I wasn't expecting to translate a video that would make me cry, but there were multiple points in this video as I was like watching JoCat's video that, like, I'm translating this and I was in tears, just crying, and also laughing. I wasn't really anticipating that either. I mean, JoCat's very very funny. I think that's that that's key. But anyway, we'll get right into it, and I will play the video, and I'm gonna stop it from time to time and just talk to you about some stuff. So, let's get in there. All right, so here we are. I think, oh, huggies for me. You're so sweet, Ellie. Okay, here we are. I realized just now that I want to move something around, so give me just 1 second. I think it's this, and I think it needs to move down here, maybe. I think that should go there. Nope, I didn't get it in the right place. That looks like it's in the right place. Now my head can move in front of things. I don't know why that's important to me, but anyway, here we go. We're gonna play it and we're gonna talk about it, and it's gonna be great. So here we go. Tell me about sound and things like that. It's a little loud for me, but
I want to tell you a story about my first trip to Japan.
okay, so I'm going to pause right again. Hi there, hi. How are you? I'm really great. I'm doing really well. So we're going to pause right away. We're going to talk immediately about one decision that I had to make very, very quickly. Actually, I'll discuss two decisions that I had to make really, really quickly. And of course, all of these things, I'm saying I made these translation decisions, but I should state that, like, I communicated directly with JoCat to talk about these things and, like, make these decisions together, what should and what shouldn't be translated in particular ways, right? And so let's talk first about politeness in Japanese, right? So there are some tone considerations that I was thinking about before I ever even like looked at the script and thought about things. When you're talking to an audience in Japanese, there are a couple different ways that you can do that. So we can have kind of like standard level casual Japanese, where you're just approaching to somebody on a super super casual, what we would call da form Japanese. So all of your sentences wouldn't end in something like a des, but they would end in something like a da. And that's like a friendly, like you're approaching somebody on just a really, just like a same level, right? You're not above them, you're not below them, you're not creating any kind of cultural distinction between the two of you. You're both like buddies. And so when I first thought about the script, before I even started like thinking about how I was going to translate it, I was thinking, because I knew it was going to be conversational, that I thought maybe this needs to be like a da style, just a typical casual Japanese. Um, but once I read it, one of the things that I was thinking about JoCat's style, presenting this kind of conversation, and it felt to me like it was really naturally kind of like a rakugo style, which is kind of a Japanese like seated comedy show. And so I kind of wanted to try to honor that vibe a little bit, and it did feel a little bit more polite, but not to the level that I felt like it should use something like a keigo. So keigo is like a very, very, very polite Japanese. Actually, I might even call it like a humble Japanese, where you're really just using like the most respectful kind of words to convey your point about various things. And it didn't feel like it was that level, so I wanted to keep it just a traditional des mas style, where it was just polite but not overly polite. And I think that my translation kind of captured that vibe, that feeling of just being kind of like a baseline level politeness. But the other thing that I'll mention right here, right off the bat, is the first person pronoun in Japanese. So there are three really common ones. There's watashi, there's boku, and there's ore, right? And those are the three most common personal pronouns in Japanese, but they're not all of them, right? There are others, like atashi is another one. So we have watashi and we have atashi, and atashi is like pretty feminine, But the thing about them is that all of the personal pronouns in Japanese are kind of a little bit gendered. And we in Japanese classrooms often teach and are often taught that watashi is the most gender neutral form. But when you talk to actual speakers of Japanese, that's not really the case. It's not really the case that watashi is all that particularly gender neutral. For speakers of Japanese, it's a little bit feminine. It's a little bit feminine. It has kind of some feminine undertones and some feminine vibes. And one of the reasons I don't want to get into a political thing, and I don't want to say too much that might, be insensitive or upsetting. But I will say that, like, oftentimes there's kind of this, like, underlying idea that watashi is taught to foreigners because it is a little bit more feminine and it kind of marks you a little bit as a foreigner. And I felt pretty strongly that boku would be better in the translation for this video. So that's what I ended up deciding to go with, and I think JoCat agreed with me. So I felt good about that. And so yeah, that's that. So we went with boku, and not something like ore. Ore really is like really strongly masculine. It's like dude bro kind of a talk. So yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. I love the choices of music throughout this video, and I also really like this. It really, like, my first time in Japan, I flew over the North Pole,
So Echo and I
which was
always wanted
wild.
to go. Her as someone who potentially wants to live there one day, and me as someone who always wanted to see what the culture was about. Though I had flown internationally before, this would be my first time in almost a decade since the last time I did.
I don't
Combined
get
with
to
the fact
fly a
that
lot
I am
either. I want to
growing
fly
a
more.
developing hatred towards flying, I was prepared for 15 hours of dread. And it was dreadful.
It's such a vibe. Those, just like these shots of the airplane. I don't
someone
know.
who cannot sleep.
Just makes me
unless they're laying
excited.
down. So the entire flight was just me adjusting and readjusting my position to try and get just a little bit of shut eye.
This is me
With
too.
the
I have a
zero.
hard time sleeping in chairs or on airplanes or anything like that. And it really is a long flight.
But thank
One of the times that I went to Japan, it was actually sort of a 32-hour flight, because I had several layovers. So I had to fly from Canada to the United States. From the United States, I had to go to, I don't recall if it was, I think it may have been, I had to touch down in China for a little bit. And then I had a long layover there. And then I had to fly to Japan. And it really was like a 32-hour trip. It can be rough.
Thankfully, when it was finally over, I had a lot of fun to look forward to. Right after we get through customs, and grab our train cards, and Wi-Fi box, and cash, and drag our very heavy bags through the city to our Airbnb.
So I want to say something really quickly about the use of connected ideas in Japanese, because this was actually, of all things, one of the easier things to translate, because Japanese really likes these kind of connected sentence structures. So as JoCat is talking about, do this, and then do this, and then do this. There's some languages that don't particularly like that, and they want kind of closed off sentences, instead of having this continuative style. Japanese has a really, really easily continuative style in form of the te form and the she form. Yeah, as Hazel is saying, there's really no such thing as a run-on sentence in Japanese, so it makes it really easy to go and this and this and this and this, yeah.
The flight arrived at about 4 p.m., but we didn't make it to the place we were staying at until nearly 9. Most of the time we had spent waiting in line for our train cards, since there was only one terminal for basically everyone at the airport. This was because there was a chip shortage for the Suica cards that let you use the public transit in Tokyo. And
So this was an interesting little segment to translate, because in Japanese, all of this kind of needs to get front loaded in a different way than the way that it came out. So JoCat's original script has most of the time we spent waiting for the train cards. There was one terminal, and there was a chip shortage, and all of these things kind of come together in such a way that the Japanese really needs to change things around. And so the explanation needed to go first. So I had to move things in such a way that we had the airport only had one terminal for everyone, and so therefore we needed to wait for a long time. And the reason for that was because they only had there was an insufficient shortage of chips for the Suica card. Yeah.
And the only ones available were the Welcome Suica cards, which only lasted 28 days. But that was fine because that's about how long we were going to stay. After all that was done, we finally made it to our home base for the month.
I really liked translating home base here. What I went with was kyoten, which is a strategic foothold. So it really sounded like home base. I think we use that pretty liberally, pretty easily in English. You could just be like, yeah, that's where we were staying. That's where we stayed. That was our home base. But in Japanese, I kind of wanted to play with that a little bit, and I turned it into kind of like almost a military term. So your kyoten is like your foothold, where you're holding up and maybe you're being assaulted on all sides or something like that. I just found that kind of cute.
An apartment in Sumida City. And also by a very convenient Lawson, of which we would
Lawson
visit
are
near
so
daily
wonderful.
whenever we
I
would need
miss
a quick
them
meal.
every single day.
Thank you, Lawson employees. You are our heroes.
I love
So,
JoCat's
here we were,
animation
finally
style.
in
It's
Japan.
so
We chose
cute.
Tokyo because it's the most foreigner-friendly. A nice baby's first Japan location. Especially considering Echo is still learning the language, and I know little to none of that language. I can speak Thai though. แต่ว่าผมลืมภาษาไทยไปตั้งเยอะ แล้วก็พูดเหมือนฝรั่ง
So there's a translator's note here. I don't know why when I pause the translation goes away, but that's what keeps happening for some reason. Anyway, my translator note. When I first saw this, I didn't realize I was translating through two languages. So JoCat is speaking Thai, and then we're getting the English script, and then I'm translating the English script into Japanese. Is it because YouTube is scuffed? That makes good sense. Anyway, my translator's note basically says in Japanese that faran in Japanese is the kind of portmanteau. Portmanteau is not the word that I'm looking for. It's the localization of the word farang in Thai. Not a word that I know because I don't really speak any Thai whatsoever. But I guess farang maybe comes from foreigner, and then that gets translated into Japanese as faran. And so I have kind of given a note here that it basically means gaijin. And if you know anything about gaijin, that can be a little bit of a dirty word in Japanese. It's got some definite connotations that are I don't know that I'm gonna say like super negative, but there's definitely stuff there. There's feelings involved with the word gaijin. So anyway, that was my little translator's note.
There's a lot of English translations around for signage.
This
but
is so
most
true,
impressively,
especially in
public transit
Tokyo.
was so easy to understand that as far as getting around goes, we had basically no problems finding our way around the city. So, what did we do on our first day in this new foreign country to us, ripe with centuries of culture and dozens of fun new things to do?
This is
Against
another
the
one of those
recommendations
places
of a
where
good
I had
friend
to
of
switch
ours,
things around,
and
so I had to
basically
give the
everyone else
reason
who's ever been to
first.
Japan. We went to Kura Sushi.
Nothing wrong with
sorry.
Kura Sushi. It's okay. Kura Sushi's okay. Forgiven.
In our defense, we don't have a Kura Sushi anywhere where we live in the US without having to fly to another state. And if we're gonna take
Also
in what
super
Japan has to
valid.
offer, why not their equivalent of a McDonald's, right? On top of that, it also had the benefit of allowing people to order food without
So
having to
this up here at the top says kaiten sushi. Kaiten sushi is like those we used to have one near me that was actually boats. So you have your like conveyor belt, or in some way you have sushi that's kind of moving around some location, and you basically just take the plates, pull them off of the conveyor belt or off of the little boat, and eat it. And then you don't really have to interact with anyone. You actually pay by plate at the end, and the plates are often color coded. So like a blue plate might cost a certain amount, a red plate might cost a certain amount, and then at the end, last time I was there, I was in a much more rural area. I wasn't in Tokyo. Um, but you would take your plates, you would hand them to a person, they would count it and go two blue, three red, four yellow, and then they would give you a total based on that. But now they have it where there's a robot and you just kind of like feed the robot your plate, and then the robot calculates it up based on the color and then spits out a receipt. So what he's saying is so super valid, because it's exactly that. It's going to be very very easy. Hi, Jet Set!
talk to anybody, which is great for nervous foreigners with the language barrier who don't want to accidentally inconvenience anybody. Echo tried a lot of stuff. I mostly had the meat. Oh, and also every 5
Yeah, this
plays,
is what
you
I
get
was
a
talking
chance to win
about.
a
Like, it
gachapon,
just
of which
feeds
I
that
won
and then
on my first
gives
try.
you a
The rest of
price.
the day, we planned on getting a few things from
Another thing that I should say about those kaiten sushi, a lot of them, especially in the rural areas, if you go to rural Japan and you go to a kaiten sushi, um, they take a hit on every piece of sushi that they sell. If they're selling fish, they are not making a profit off of that fish. How is it possible that they can stay in business and sell people fish, and they're making like less money than they paid for the fish itself based on the plate? The way that they do it, toys and drinks, right? They super super upcharge for their drinks. You grab a drink and you're paying, a upcharge of 1,000% of what they spent to get you a drink with ice in it, right? Um, but also for the little kids, because so many people go to a kaiten sushi with their family, they will put on the conveyor belt little toys, and ostensibly like the kids or the people like me, the people like me in the world will see that and go, oh my god, that's cute, I have to have that little toy, I really want it, look, it's only $6, and it probably cost them 32 cents, to put it out. I mean, I'm using American money to talk about this, but of course it's yen. Anyway, they tend to make their money by selling toys and drinks. Anyway,
Daiso and Book Off Plus in a
I
sort of
love
shopping
Book
district
Off
in
so
Ueno.
much.
Or maybe Ueno is the shopping district? I don't know.
So
But
I
it was
lived
a
in
really nice
Ueno.
place.
I've
Just about
talked
every
about.
few feet there was
I
a
keep
store that
having to
caught our eye.
pause. I'm sorry. I keep having to pause so I can talk about my own experiences a little bit. I lived in Ueno, and I've recently told people on my video, when I lived in Ueno, I lived in a one tatami mat apartment, which is basically 6 foot by 3 foot, um, and that is so small. That was like the entire size of my apartment was just like lay there, and that's it. And actually the door even opened in. So once you had a futon laying out, the futon took up the entire space of the apartment, and you couldn't open the door. Jet says that that's so cool. I didn't know that you were born there. That's so neat. I really want to go to Okinawa, pretty badly. Maybe we can go together. Let's do a field trip. All right, I'll keep going. I'm sorry. I keep pausing. My bad.
We even found a nice clothing store where I got this
I
cute
think
cozy
this is
sweater
so
that looks like
cute.
low-level RPG gear.
Low-level
And it helped keep me
RPG
warm the entire
gear
trip. Speaking
was
of which,
fun to
I wish
translate.
I could show you the absolute amazing fashion that was on display in some of these clothing stores. If it weren't for our budget, I would have personally gotten about a dozen outfits.
Same.
Fun situation that happened while we were out. I was feeling thirsty at one point, so we stopped by a convenience store to grab something to drink. I found a can of lemon water that looked pretty refreshing.
This makes me laugh so much. So this part right here at the bottom, that says osake. That says alcohol right there. And as soon as I saw this, I knew where this was going, and I was already laughing. That I just think that this is such a hilarious little story.
So we bought it, found a nice spot to sit and refresh ourselves, and went about our way in more of the shopping district. But then I started to feel a bit woozy.
So cute.
Echo had a look over my drink, and it turns out it was alcoholic, and I hadn't even noticed. Now, being a little tipsy in public was not a big deal, but what was of note is that I had finally found an alcoholic drink that I liked. Some of you may remember
I
did a
actually
few
know
drunk
that
gaming
drink. I've
streams in
had
the
that
past
drink
with my
many
friends,
times in
and know
Japan.
that I usually can't even stomach a
Tipsy
few sips,
JoCat
let
is
alone the
adorable.
chugs
Yes, I
taken for the
agree.
stream. So this was a big deal to me. It may come as no surprise to people who remember those streams as well that I am
Oh,
a
no.
huge lightwait. So even this little drink with 5% alcohol
I love
content
Echo's
was giving
eating
me
animation.
red
It
flush
just makes me
and a
laugh
warm,
so
cozy
much.
feeling. The next day, we did a bit more aimless exploring just to get a bit more of our bearings around the immediate area, and somehow accidentally found ourselves at the Tokyo Skytree, of all places.
I have to admit, I've never been in the Skytree. I really want to go now.
It's not like it was all that far from our Airbnb, but it was still a pleasant surprise to land there without really meaning to. And inside was a lot of cool stores and food stands, but most importantly, and most dangerously, gachapon machines. They're literally all over Tokyo. In fact, on our way through some of the subway stations, we came across dozens. But here they were, stacks upon stacks of them.
So I liked translating this because the way that I translated it in Japanese, where they were piled as high as a mountain and then had a serious impact on our wallets. I just enjoyed the way that that came out in translation. So I don't know. I thought that was cute.
Much to the dismay of our wallets. Luckily, we were able to hold some sense of impulse control, but from that point
So
on,
many cameos in
Echo
this
devised
video.
a plan and began saving our 100 yen coins in a very special little pouch.
100 en dama is 100 en coin.
Earlier that day, Echo also secretly got me a bunch of probably
Yay, special
the
stream.
biggest grapes I have ever seen in my life.
I
See,
love
we
this
decided
part.
to come to Japan in October because that would be the time
Oh,
when it'd
thank
be
you.
both grape
Thank you,
season
Jet Set.
and persimmon season. Echo was interested in the latter fruits, whereas I don't like grapes, but I do love grape flavors. It's definitely one of my favorite fruit flavors. And in
I
America,
love it. It's
there's
so
just one
cute.
drink that I really like to get whenever we go to our local Asian market. Ramune. And they
I really enjoy this part of the video. It makes me so happy when JoCat is like, they have this special drink at my local market, Ramune, and it's just so cute to me. Yeah, there are lots of little cameos. They're kind of all throughout this video. Actually, JoCat did a whole stream where he went through with Echo and marked out like all of the cameos. I stopped watching at like the 3-hour mark, and I think they were up to like 73 cameos or something like that, and then realized that maybe they had missed one and were going to have to go back. And at that point, I was like, I need to go do other things. But yeah, Romani, really good stuff. Not this one. Is that the lychee? Perhaps, I'm not sure. That could be lychee that that JoCat doesn't like.
They had a grape flavor that I love. I also love this candy that could be found in the same store called
Haichu.
And
Yeah, it does
so,
look like
for a long
lychee.
time I wondered, a lot of Japanese grape flavored things sort of taste similar. Do grapes just taste different in Japan? So, this was my chance to finally see if I might like Japanese grapes more than American grapes.
I believe these are Concord grapes.
So this is the first time that we get to actual kind of like non-narration dialogue. And so I was thinking a lot when I went into the translation of this, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to make this different? And I decided ultimately, so I was talking before about politeness levels. I decided to do the narration in a decimal. Loud noise. Thank you very much for the bits. I got really scared. I'm not used to that. Thank you, Jet. I'm crying. Okay. So I decided to do a Desmas style for the narration, but I decided to do Da style, just like casual style for when they were talking to one another, because that made the most sense to me. And so also at this point, I had to make a decision. Hype train for me. I had to make a decision on how I was going to do a personal pronoun for Echo too. And I didn't know for certain. Like I had the feeling that Echo uses she/her pronouns. thank you. Thank you so much for the subscribe. I really appreciate that. Also, unlimited power. I love that emote. So yeah, I ultimately decided to use watashi for Echo, and then continue to maintain boku for JoCat. Also, this part is adorable.
Is that what they're called? It's a different type of grape from the one that we have in America.
The music choices are
But is
so
American
good.
grapes are about the same, neutral. Still not a fruit guy.
Peak content right here.
I'm sorry.
I will happily eat them. I'm excited.
I love it.
Alas, I guess I just don't like grapes.
It's so sweet.
The next couple of days, we decided to rest up and do some work in our apartment because, yay,
Nom,
being a
nom, nom.
YouTuber means you are never truly free. But that evening, we did go to what I personally consider to be one of my favorite places to go in
Tappies.
that entire
Little
trip.
tappies with the
local
hands.
Yakitori Izakaya, a bar that served grilled meat.
Yakitori, really, really good. Good food at Yakitori. Not a whole lot that I can eat, unfortunately, since I can't eat meat. So the yakitori part means the kind of grilled skewers like this. Izakaya is kind of like a Japanese bar, and there are Japanese bar foods that I can eat, and they're so, so, so good. So you can get some like really, really good like grilled veggies at Japanese bars and things like that, and some good soups. It's surprising how difficult it is for me to eat in Japan, unfortunately, but
Little bamboo skewers. The food was great. The drinks were great.
S tier.
I even found another alcoholic beverage that I enjoyed, so that was another win. But the thing I liked most about it was the manager, who was incredibly patient and accommodating to us from the instant we stepped in. It was probably pretty obvious to
I
him
love
that
that
we
part
were
too.
tourists, so even though we could not speak a word of each other's language, he was nice enough to gesture to us each part of the bar for us to understand the regular procedure. Use the hand sanitizer, pick a seat that leaves room for others, order a drink before you order food. But coolest of all, he would point to each item on the menu, which did not have an English translation, and taught us how to read and pronounce each item, including pointing to the display as to which one each item corresponded to. I don't know if this was just because we were foreigners or if it was just
So it hasn't been my experience whatsoever that this is just standard practice. I mean, it could be for just like that establishment, but in from my perspective as someone who's been to Japan quite a bit, I didn't get this kind of special treatment at most of the places where I would stay. But keep in mind, most of the places I was going usually were actually far more rural, right? So I didn't spend a whole lot of time in Tokyo outside of the time when I was living in Ueno, and it wasn't the best experience. But when I was traveling, you know, in places that were more rural, I would have more often than not Japanese people who did not speak almost any English at all, and they would be very intimidated, not intimidating, but intimidated when I would come in, and they would feel like I can't communicate with her. And there's even a thing, and it's kind of like, it's not a great thing to talk about, but there is kind of that culture of you're clearly not a Japanese speaker, and therefore I am incapable of speaking to you, even when you're speaking Japanese to them. So you'll be speaking in clear Japanese, and they'll go, no, I can't speak English. But I don't want to say that that's, please don't misconstrue my point. I'm not saying that that's racism. I'm saying that that's more xenophobia, and it's more just kind of like, this is unusual and strange, and I don't know what to do with it. And so as a result, I'm going to push it away as much as I possibly can and not deal with it. Now, in a place like Tokyo, this doesn't surprise me too much that would be kind of like the process that they would be able to point out and say, this is this, this is this, this is this, let me help you. The only thing that does surprise me about that is that Tokyo is so busy. It's so busy all the time. And so, you know, it is surprising that they would even like have time to do that kind of thing. But I think that's really, really sweet. And I'm so glad that they had that experience.
standard procedure there, but he would regularly check up on us to make sure everything was good on our end. And if that wasn't cool enough, at one point, Echo had decided to translate the menu for my convenience because unga bunga stupid American.
Okay, I gotta stop again. Unga bunga, stupid American brain not knowing another language. I did not know how to translate this at all. And so I actually gave JoCat 3 options for how to take care of this particular phrase, right? Because actually Japanese does have a phrase like unga bunga, but it's incredibly offensive. And so I definitely didn't want to use that, right? And so I provided JoCat with 3 options. So one of the options that I had was to translate a sentence something like, I'm an American and I can't speak any other languages, but I did the whole thing in katakana, right? As if like I can't write real Japanese. I'm gonna write everything in foreign speak. And I thought, well, that's like an okay, that's a moderately decent approach to it. I thought that that was like somewhat funny, like a 6 out of 10 funny. This option, which is the one that he ultimately went with, to me is hilarious. So this whole sentence, right, is バカなアメリカ人が他の言語まあ言語を話せません話せないね but I wrote it all in the wrong kanji. So this actually is the sentence, which would translate to, I'm a dumb American and I can't speak other languages. バカなアメリカ人ですね. But instead of translating it as baka, I've translated it with just wrong kanji. So the whole sentence is just like absolute junk. Um, and I think that's hilarious. I just think it's really, really, really funny. Um, anyway, yeah. Or the other option that I would have given would have been just like a really straightforward translation, same sentence, no joke, nothing funny about it. Just I'm a dumb American and I can't speak other languages. But I'm really really glad that he ended up deciding to go with this like mojibake no dumb kanji kind of translation. I just think it's hilarious.
American brain not knowing another language. But one day, we had come home from that restaurant, and I had lost the menu, which really sucked. Echo put a lot of work into that thing. But then, when we returned to the Yakitori place, it turns out the manager had found and kept Echo's translated menu and held onto it for us. This man single-handedly watered my crops, cleared my skin, and cured my depression.
This was another one that I had a really hard time translating because I just didn't know if this would culturally translate to like he watered my crops, he took care of these things for me, and as a result it was good, right? I didn't know if that nuance would get across. And so I actually also offered just a regular like その人が助けました but I don't know, like 助けてくれました would have been just so like bland, and I just felt like it needed more, especially with the visual element to it, because if I just said like その人が助けてくれました then it wouldn't have matched up with the visual element. And so ultimately I just decided that I was going to just go for it and put it all fully in there. I gave him both options and he, smartly went with the option that kind of just explained everything. And we let the cultural nuance of it just go. So if people pick up on it and they get it, then that's great. And if they don't, then I mean, there's got to be a reason why he's so helpful. I don't know. I just think it's funny.
I love him. Another work day, so nothing interesting going on, but what was important was that
yes, Japanese is a very heavily context language. It's context-driven, as opposed to our content-driven language.
And it's your responsibility to categorize your trash. Sure, they have sanitation workers pick up the garbage like normal, but it's your job to make sure the right trash is stored correctly and in the right place.
We actually have this in the office building where I often work. So in the office building, there's actually a trash receptacle that is sorted out for usually 7 to 8 different types of trash. And one of the really cool things that I noticed in Japan was they have a separate, like if you had a drink, right? There's a drain where you can pour your drink out, but then it's got a filter at the top that's going to leave the ice. And then you can grab the ice and throw it in a different receptacle. And why would that be? Why would they separate the ice out from the regular drink? Because they melt down the ice and then use it as fresh water for watering plants. So I think that's really, really cool.
In America, we only really have trash and recyclables. That is, unless your local government decides to take the recycling bin away and make you drive all the way to the recycling center. But anyway, you usually just kind of throw everything in one place. Not so in Japan. To keep things simple, there are really two main umbrellas that all trash falls under in Japan. Burnables and recyclables. Easy enough, just like the States. But with the recyclables, you have to separate them and store them a certain way for trash pickup, like bundling papers together, putting metal cans all in the same bag, cleaning out any reusable cups so there aren't any food bits left in it, and the like. It was a very different way of doing things than Echo and I were used to, so it took a bit of time to
This is
figure
a
out,
relatively
but
straightforward
once we did,
translation straight
it was
through.
kinda nice knowing that our
No,
trash
no
was
real
going to the right
problems here.
places.
There's the Lawson again. I love Lawson.
Today was our first day of special plans. Disney Sea. It was one of the first available things we could book, and thankfully it wasn't all that busy that day, so we never really had to worry about crowds or too long a lines. I think it was a bit more of a park than a theme park, as me and Echo spent...
I had to translate this a little bit differently, so I had to say that Disney Sea is more like a park than like a theme park, because I wasn't quite sure how to sort of grab a park rather than a theme park. To get that nuance in Japanese, I just treated it like it was a public park, and I think that kind of gets the idea that it felt more like a park than it did like a theme park.
A lot of time just sort of walking around since the rides were fairly far apart. We only really got to ride like 4 rides before deciding to call it a day, which we were overall fine with, but me personally, I just wish there were more rides for the size of the park, or if the park was a little smaller so there wasn't so much walking.
I haven't been to
We
Disney
also
Sea,
grabbed a
so I
few
can't
souvenirs for
say,
some friends.
but
Thank you for bringing me to France.
Yeah, we'll have to check for bed bugs later.
I also didn't have the context for this originally, so I just translated it as is without really knowing about the Paris bedbug infestation and just being just a little bit confused about where that came from. But yeah, I guess that's a thing.
Okay.
Not a lot happened this day. I mostly stayed in and near our Airbnb to sort of rest up after going to the Disney park yesterday, while Echo had a girl day where she went.
Another thing here. So a lot of times, JoCat is talking about did something today, did something yesterday. Oh yeah, is that Shen? Is that Shen right there? Did I stop right on Shen? That's so cool. Okay, so as I was translating this, I felt like translating in Japanese as 今日私たちはそういうことしました. It felt like weird to talk about today, yesterday, and things like that in Japanese. And so I kind of shifted all of that over to say on this day or on the previous day. I think it captures it better in Japanese than talking about 今日何々何ことをしました. It just comes across as a little bit weird.
Went to Tobu and got some cakes. She actually did quite a few girl days on our trip, and if you want to hear about those, feel free to subscribe to her channel, where she'll tell you all about it. For me though, it was nice to just have a rest day where I could wander and take in the local area where we were staying, especially with how convenient the public transportation is. Okay, speaking of, can I just talk about the public transportation really quick?
Trains.
Because I think
Trains
that
are
was
good.
probably my single most
Trains are so
favorite
good.
thing about
I
staying
love
in Japan,
trains.
or at least in Tokyo. The fact that there are trains and buses everywhere that help you get where you need to go, and how it makes just about everything within walking distance. Sure.
Okay, I want to talk about 2 things really quickly. I love trains too. Thank you, Ellie. I want to first talk about how also in China, the train system was so dope. Japan and China both have really great train systems. Usually the bus system in Japan, no problem. However, I'm going to tell a quick story. I had this situation where I was just outside of Kyoto. I wasn't like I wasn't out in the sticks. I wasn't like out in the middle of nowhere. I was fairly close to the outskirts of Kyoto, and I had a bus. Literally, I saw the bus driver see me, lock eyes with me, shake his head no, and just kept going. So that kind of thing does happen. Like you do have situations where, I my assumption, because that was my bus and that bus should have stopped there, and so ultimately I can only assume that was a decision. But that was really the only ever bad experience that I had with a bus in Japan. So yeah, buses pretty good, trains really good.
There are roads and stuff in the larger parts of the city where having a car would definitely be beneficial, but me and Echo never had to step foot in a single car the whole trip, save for once. In America,
There where that foreshadowing call out is. The script that I have just has the whole thing foreshadowing. I didn't translate the whole word because the word gets cut off. I just thought it was funnier to not translate the whole thing.
there are very few places where we have things like trains and bus stops. They exist, but really you'll only ever find them in certain very dense cities that have been around since the colonial era. And even then, a lot of them get replaced by roads and highways. To get anywhere in America, you need a car, full stop. And yeah, there have been attempts to add in more public transportation, but for some reason, it never really took off, and it's a real mystery why. No one truly knows.
So as he's saying, no one truly knows. It's a big mystery, really. I decided to have a little bit of like liberal translation here, so I translated as kind of like, why could that be? Nobody knows. まあ、誰も知りません。超不思議だ. I really like the word 不思議. 不思議 means like mysterious. So 超不思議だ. It's a super mystery, something like that.
It's a big mystery, really. But in Japan, or at least in Tokyo, you can get just about anywhere on foot. There are train stations at just about every other block, and navigating them is so simple and easy to understand that children can use it, and do. Whenever we would go somewhere, me and Echo would occasionally see a kid, no older than 10, get on the train all by themselves.
I love this
with no
part. It's
parents
so
or
cute.
escort
This
or
is so
anything.
adorable.
They just know
I'm
how to
so
use the
cool.
trains and buses.
That kid is
It
so
was
cool.
especially
I'm
helpful
so
that all the
cool.
signage was super
It's so
foreigner-friendly
cute.
since Tokyo had just recently renovated the city to be foreigner-friendly. For the 2020 Olympics, it was supposed to host before the... Yeah. What made the whole thing even...
Before the yeah was another one of those parts that was a little bit difficult to translate, because how do you translate before the yeah? So I eventually went with 会いに行くオリンピックは, which basically translates to, unfortunately, those Olympics, 10, 10, 10, dot, 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 something like that.
Even more fun was that at about every station, there are desks with stamps for that station, and each stamp had a different design. And so it was my and Echo's mission to get a stamp at any new station we stopped at.
I think
whenever
that's
possible.
such a cool
We even got these
mission.
cute
I
little
want to
sketchbooks
do
from one
that
of the stores
now.
at the Skytree that we would put them in. Echo's is a lot fancier than
So
mine because
cute.
she would draw cute little doodles to represent what
Ugh.
nearby attractions and things were at that
I
station.
love that art
And all we did
style.
there. But all this to say, if there was one thing I could bring home from Japan to the US, it would be the train
Trains.
system. Please.
Trains.
Please, God.
Please, trains.
Please, I just want trains.
Maid outfit.
Please,
Please, trains. Trains and
The
maids.
next 4 days, we didn't really do anything special. Spent it mostly just living in Japan. We'd do work during the day, head out to grab lunch at noon, maybe explore a bit of the city, come back to do more work, go out for dinner, maybe get distracted by an arcade for an hour or 3, check out some convenies and grab snacks, then come back and get ready for the next day. It was kind of nice to just wind down and take it all in.
Oh, there's
I know to a
Akihabara.
lot of folk that might sound like we were wasting our vacation days, but I don't know. Having to do something exciting and having a strict schedule.
Yeah,
every
it's a lot
day
of
during a
pressure
time
to
that you're
travel like
supposed to be
that.
spent relaxing doesn't sound all that enjoyable to me. Now, not everyone is able to spend a month on vacation.
Hey, trans
whether it
rights.
be because they can't
Yay,
afford
trans
it or
rights,
their
trans
schedule
rights,
doesn't
trans
allow it.
rights.
So I hope this doesn't come across like I'm saying the way we did it is the best way for everyone. But we did plan for a whole month specifically because we like having days where nothing's scheduled and we can just sort of go about doing whatever we want without having to worry that we weren't maximizing our vacation time. Plus, we did sort of have something special to do most of the days, as Echo scheduled while I sat sucking my thumb in the corner because planning things is scary and I'm just a little guy. It's my first day. So we did
So this was another bit that I had trouble translating. So specifically, JoCat talks about sitting in the corner sucking my thumb, and I was really, really hesitant to translate that way. I was really afraid that a Japanese listener would hear that and kind of maybe think the wrong thing about that and get some kind of weird ideas about it. And so I decided to kind of like, instead of talking about that, because it's a little bit scary language, I just basically said that Echo did the planning, JoCat didn't do any planning. And then with the next part, when he's like, I'm just a little guy, it's my first day, uh, I think this is also quite cute. I switched over at that point from boku to watachi, which is baby talk in Japanese. And so basically I just said, I didn't do any planning, but I said it in baby talk. And so I think that captured the idea of the sucking my thumb in the corner without actually using any language that's kind of could be maybe slightly offensive.
at least have variety, not just constantly on mandatory fun mode. If anyone has ever had helicopter parents, you know what I mean by mandatory fun.
No comment. No comment. No comment.
This day we plan to go to the Book Off
Book
Super Bazaar
Off!
because I needed a second monitor to facilitate my work. See, I normally would bring my own monitor, but I've had nasty luck with every single time I fly with one. Doesn't matter how padded or protected it is, the airline will always manage to break or bend my stuff.
Okay, I have to tell a funny story here. The first time I translated this line in particular, I was really tired. And then right after translating this line, I decided I'm shutting down my translation. I'm going to bed. I'm going to get like fresh eyes in the morning. And when I came back to my translation in the morning, I had mistranslated this sentence. And as I was reading through it, I realized that I had translated it in such a way that what it said was, if you try to protect your monitor, the airline will retaliate by smashing it. I found that really funny. So I corrected it, of course. It's now a proper translation that basically just says, it doesn't matter how hard you try, they're going to eventually break it. But I realized that I had translated it as, they're going to retaliate on you and break your stuff for trying to protect it. And I thought that was hilarious.
So this time, I said, no more packing monitors. I'll just get one in Japan. And so we did. Book Off is basically a massive secondhand store with just about everything you can think of inside. From clothes to bags to
Really
musical
cheap
instruments to
manga,
sporting
if you're
equipment.
into
It's got
manga.
everything. We found a
Super
few
cheap,
Pokemon
like
plushes
$1.
to bring home for some friends. What wasn't so great about it was that while we were browsing, we had a basket with a few items already, and at some point we accidentally crossed a section where that item was supposed to be stored in. And so it began beeping its alarm non-stop until an employee found us asking if we were going to buy it.
This same thing
In which
happened to
case,
me in
we
China.
confirmed,
When I was in
apologized
China, this
profusely, and
exact
immediately
same
checked
thing
out
happened to
so
me
as
one
to
time.
never bother them ever again.
Oh, that's like a beignet.
Today was a special day.
Again,
We were
I
going to the
translated
Pokemon
as
Center
that
because
day
I had
instead of
planned on
today.
grabbing a bunch of plushies to give to friends back home since there's so many Pokemon.
Hydrate! It's water
so
time!
easily available to buy if you're in the US. And in the cases where they are... Anyway,
I have to
it was
talk
really
about this.
cool to
I have to talk about this. When I first saw that, I didn't have the context of the price tag, and so all I had was there are lots of different Pokemon. They're not always available in the United States, and in the cases where they are, 10, 10, 10. But I hadn't seen. I'm sorry, I snorted. I hadn't seen the video yet, so I was just going through the script as I was looking at things and trying to start making decisions to prepare for when I saw the video that I would have the context. I didn't have the context of, and in the cases where they are available in the United States, my anticipation was not that it was going to be a price tag. I thought it was going to be ecchi. I thought it was going to be, and in the cases where they are, they're super horny. So I'm really glad that eventually I got to see the video before I translated it, because originally I was going to translate it as they're really, really ecchi Pokemon that are available in the United States. You can see where my mind goes.
See all the Pokemon merchandising. They had keychains and stickers and jewelry and dozens of other things I hadn't realized were even in the realm of possibility of what Pokemon could make into a branded product. What I really appreciated as someone who plays the games, though, was that the front of the store had a nice little mural with
It really
all
is
the
a
different generations of
very
games being
cool
showcased.
touch.
What wasn't so nice was
Pika,
they had
Pikachu,
Pikachu singing the
Pika,
Pokemon Center
Pika,
theme
Pikachu,
on
Pika,
repeat
Pikachu,
the
Pika,
entire
Pikachu,
time.
Pika, Pikachu, 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 Pika.
And my heart goes out to all the employees who have to listen to it for 8+ hours a day,
I subscribe to you.
every day, all the time. At one point, it started to really get to us, and Echo started punching me in rhythm to the Pikachu cries.
It's so cute. I love this part. Punch, 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 punch.
I don't get it.
So
Pokemon
adorable.
has a massive library of music. Please, just let the employees listen to something else. Free them from this yellow electric rat.
Okay, free them from this yellow I can't talk. Free them from this yellow electric rat prison. I had no idea how to handle this in Japanese. Thank you, it's stretch time. Stretch, posture check. I didn't know how to handle free them from this yellow electric rat prison, right? And when you think about it, like, what does that mean in English? Is it a prison that is yellow with an electric rat in it? Is it a yellow electric rat prison? Is it a prison for Pikachu? Is it a prison, right? There are lots and lots of ways that you could take that and try to think about it. And so ultimately the translation that I went with was that it was Pikachu's prison. Pikachu had the prison and was the prison guard who owned the prison and was keeping you in a yellow electric rat prison because Pikachu is the owner of the prison. I just thought that was an interesting way to handle it.
At prison.
Pika Pikachu.
The next few days were what I was personally looking forward to the most from this trip because they were lined with visits to a bunch of themed cafes.
Themed
2 of
cafes!
them being themed after my favorite video games, you may know.
So I have since found out, JoCat did a stream talking about this video. All of these games in the background are JoCat's favorite games. And then, of course, these two, which, you know, we'll figure out what they are in a second. No spoilers, right? And I think these are some really, really great decisions, right? So, you know, he's got some really great games that he's highlighting here, all in the background, his favorite games. I particularly want to shout out the Mass Effect 2, right? Really great game. I think Mass Effect 1 was pretty good. Mass Effect 2, really great. I think it's a shame they never made a third one, but, you know, it is what it is. We've got 1 and 2, and we can be happy with that.
Of them. Today, though, it was the Final Fantasy XIV
Yay,
Eorzea
14!
Cafe in Akihabara.
I like Akihabara a lot. It's my favorite part of Tokyo. Well, my second favorite. I like Ikebukuro as well, but Akihabara is really nice.
Funny enough, the very same building also had a Dragon Quest cafe and one more themed cafe that we were going to tomorrow. But what really made this special was that we
again,
had the
tomorrow I
collab
translated
cafe
as the
queen
next
herself,
day.
Emi Richu, with us too.
Yay!
She had already been to this cafe before, but being a 14 player, I was ready to drop some sick lore.
At one point, I
onto her
did talk to
ignorant
JoCat
mind.
about
The
whether or
cafe
not to
itself was
translate
really
all
cool.
of the
They had
little
14 music
text in
playing,
the
which was
background,
always
like
nice.
Emirichu had
And the
joined the
walls were
party.
covered in various
but
official art and props
we
evoking
went
the game.
without.
I ordered the fired dodo, which was basically a deep fried chicken leg. And Hien's
I
big
had
Lee
quite a
acclaimed
hard
traditional
time
cuisine
finding
of
a
the
lot of
Mole
these,
tribe. A bunch of sausages.
I guess, and I'm glad that this one was here, but I guess the Final Fantasy Cafe changes their menu around quite often, And so things like the fried dodo, or fired dodo, not fried, but fired dodo. I went searching online. I dug and I dug and I dug. I went through like old menus. I pulled up as many of the old menus as I could possibly find. I went through like people's Reddit posts when they went and like did they take a picture of the menu and could I zoom in just so that I make sure that I get the translation of some of these like yeah, investigator doggo, so that I could see if I could get the translation perfect for some of these dishes. And in some cases I couldn't, and so I had to give my best estimation, and then like I would put it in parentheses so that I could kind of describe like this is as close as I could get. But luckily here I had most of the translation right there for me, so that was helpful.
And some potato wedges in a cast iron skillet. It was alright. Echo and Emily each got a fat cat meat bun. Emily also ordered the Raktika Greatwood Ahilo. Essentially,
I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what he was trying to say there, and so I just translated the whole thing phonetically.
a small shrimp caviche.
Ceviche.
And
Cute.
all three of us shared a faux hollow chocolate toast, as well as the guild soaring cheese potatoes. Some cheese fries arranged like one of the attacks from the boss fight from Shadowbringers.
When that redacted part, I translated that as himitsu, which means no, that's not what I translated it as. Hold on, I'm gonna go back for just a second. I translated that the way that we would talk about like a redacted document in Japanese. Yeah, it's himitsu. So that's how I handled that. So that's kind of like the redacted that I put in there. So it kind of translates more closely to secret. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ellie. Himitsu is how I handled that.
The food was okay. My personal favorite were the fries, but the real stars of the show were the drinks. Each one themed after a different character, location, or job from the
I
game.
thought
In
these were
clever
really
ways,
cool.
too.
Very,
I got
very
the
smart.
Gunbreaker and Crystal Tower. Echo got the White Mage in Crystal Tower. Emily got the Samurai and Dragoon, and each one was super cool and unique in how they were themed around their namesake. The Crystal Tower, for example, had this rock candy pillar sticking out of the drink, just like the tower itself. The Gunbreaker had popping candies that you could throw into the drink, like how Gunbreakers load cartridges into their gunblade. The White Mage had a cute little rose representing the blood lily you use to devastate all within your path.
I translated that a little bit more liberally, so it comes out in Japanese. So we did find Komyo Yuri. Komyo Yuri is a blood lily, and that's the way that it's handled in Final Fantasy. So I was really glad that I was able to find that. But I translated this sentence as a cute blood lily that you could use for the ruination of absolutely anyone. And I kind of like that translation as well in Japanese.
Samurai was basic and boring, just like the job in the game.
Yep.
But my favorite was the Dragoon, where you had a blueberry soaking in cherry syrup to represent the accursed eye of Nidhogg. And I was basically nerding out about all of this at both Echo and Emily the whole time we were eating.
I didn't have a word for nerding out in Japanese, so instead I translated it as just kind of like I chattered away about all of these nerdy things the entire time that we were eating.
Each drink also came with some mystery coasters as well, which had extremely nice promotional art from the various characters, expansions, patches, and events from the game. Now, Emily had already been to this cafe before, but it was real fun as a person who actually plays the game.
This is
to be
another
able to
one where
share
I
how
had
much
to
thought and
change
fan
things
service went
around
into
in
all the dishes
order
and
so
drinks
that I
in
could
order
give
to
the
elevate them
reasons
beyond just
before
being
and then
named
the
after their
explanation.
subjects. If you want to see her review as a connoisseur of themed cafes, she actually did a video that included Aor's
There was a
Cafe,
flash
which
tab
you
there,
can find
yes.
here, in case you wanted to know her perspective as a general customer. As for me, though, I am extremely biased due to being a big fan of the game, so I absolutely loved it. Even so, I think it's very
I would
clear
say
that
I'm a
lot of
small
love,
fan of
effort,
the
and
game.
expertise went into making this, not just as
Maybe
a good
an
cafe on
extra
its own,
small fan
but
of the
as a
game.
good piece of
But I do
14
like
fan
it.
service as well. And after we finished eating, Echo and Emily fought in a great battle.
I have to point this out because I didn't know it beforehand. This is apparently Avatar themed. Like that's the Appa arrow.
Battle to the death on who would pay for the check. We ultimately came out on top due to our superior numbers. And then was time for the gift.
Due to our superior numbers, this This sounds really stupid. Okay, sometimes I'm dumb. I need to admit to being very, very dumb. When I first when I first read this script and I saw due to our superior numbers, I thought he was talking about I thought he was talking about number of subscribers. I'm crying again. So it's like, does he mean that they decided to pay because they have more subscribers? Because of our superior numbers? But then, of course, I realized, of course, he's talking about the fact that there are 2 of them and 1 of Emity. Okay, I'm done. I'm such a dumb person sometimes. I'm such a dumb dog.
Shop, which had all manner of great merchandise. There were jobstone magnets and posters and plushies and
I want it
sorts
all.
of stuff.
I want
grabbed
every
a
bit
bunch
of it.
Jobstones for my friends and raid group. Shout out to the Glam Walkers. Thank you for being the coolest, most attractive bunch of players I could ever ask to raid with. But what
So
really
sweet.
caught my eye were 2 beautiful lore books.
Reception.
The first and second edition of the Encyclopedia Eorzea. Volumes of information about the 14 world, including its history.
You may notice that that book is in English. That's because that's not the Japanese book. That's not the book that was written in Japanese, as will be pertinent in just a second.
Cultures down to minute details like each region's diet, and this stuff is like drugs to me, so I had to get them. It was only when I unwrapped and opened one later that day that I had realized the very stupid, and in hindsight, very obvious mistake that I had made. I had just bought a lore book of a Japanese game
I love this translation.
from a Japanese cafe in Japan. What language did I think it was going to be in?
Very
It
cute.
sadly didn't do refunds, which was fine, but it meant I had these massive books that I could not read because I'm stupid. I eventually gave them to my good friend Shenpai when
Hey,
we got home,
Shen.
but until then, I had 2 heavy, physical hardcover copies of Shame to lug halfway across the planet as a constant reminder of my hubris.
Hubris?
After
I
the
didn't actually
cafe,
translate with hubris. I translated it with a word that means more like arrogance, but yeah, I wanted to have hubris in there, but I didn't want to shove it in.
we had a fun time exploring Akihabara, mostly playing at the arcades and spending a lot of change we had saved up over the past couple of weeks.
Hey, you got it!
Oh, you got the first try.
So, this day was a bit hectic, but it was the nature of reserving spots for themed cafes. You'll know what I mean soon. First up on the agenda was the Monster Hunter Cafe, in the very exact same building as the Final Fantasy one.
Oh,
And
I didn't
Emily
know
was
that
happy
that's
to join
what
us for this one,
hubris
too.
meant.
And much as I love the Final Fantasy Cafe, and it was definitely impressive and kitted out, the Monster Hunter Cafe is the absolute pinnacle of what you can do with the idea. The venue was bigger, they had
Oh.
more seating space, there were way more and larger
That's very interesting,
decorations
Ellie.
all over the place. Weapons and armor displayed
German
everywhere.
MTG cards.
They even had
No,
a
thank
barbecue
you.
spit. Listen, I'm not saying the Final Fantasy Cafe wasn't a 5 out of 5. What I am saying is the Monster Hunter Cafe is a 6 out of 5. As for the food, Emily and I both ordered the Teostra Fire Mappo.
I have to point out that Golka is in this, right? So Golka is right here, if you can see my cursor. Golka kind of means fried in the flames of hell. And I think that's really cool. Like hellfire? It's just neat. I don't know.
Chicken katsudon served with rice and curry. And I got what I believe to be mandatory for every hunter, the expertly cooked bone and meat. Yep, it's the well done steak.
So tasty!
Echo got the smoked salmon carpaccio, which was themed as an Arzuros' favorite food, and the Yomogi's special bunny dango. It's dango.
It's Dongo.
For drinks, I ordered the Mega Potion, which was a citrusy drink representing the main potion with additional syrups you could mix in.
You have to
possibly
make it
stand in
flashy?
for the buffing potions,
What do
like
you have to
hot
make
and cold
flashy?
drinks or armor skin from the game. I personally only really added in the blue syrup, which was blue syrup.
Blue
according
syrup.
to the menu.
And that is what it says in the Japanese too. So blue sirup. It's blue syrup. That's what it is. Yeah, the names for everything have to be flashy, like the Flames of Hell. Yeah, I agree with you, especially for Monster Hunter.
Whatever that means. The other two were not my cup of tea. Emily got the Raise Wing Ratha, which was a
I
strawberry
think I
soda
translated
with
not
cola
my
popping
cup of
candy
tea as
and
just
more of that
mama,
mysterious blue
just
syrup,
not
while
great.
Echo had the Kagero Violet Tea, an iced tea with soda
Oh,
and
I
violet
translated
syrup.
as I
We
don't
still
like
had
very
room
much.
for food,
Yeah.
but withheld because we had plans to go to another cafe soon after this one. Why? I'll get to it. But Echo was ballsy enough to order a dessert because she has a sweet tooth that must be sated or else she'll
I wanted to mention here that when you translate ballsy enough, it really does come across as big bald. Big bald. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. Balls.
explode. So she got the Kirin Lightning Strike Parfait G, which is the G rank version of a much smaller, inferior parfait, I presume. Funny enough, it had the exact same kind of rock candy that was used in the Crystal Tower drink from the Eorzea Cafe. Thusly, I conclude that the Crystal Tower is a massive Kirin horn and that one day Eorzea will face a very rude awakening when they find the ginormous horse buried under Mordona. Overall, this cafe was amazing, and I actually have a hard time deciding if I like it more than the Eorzea Cafe. The presentation was definitely a step up, but it's not like the Eorzea Cafe was lacking in the visual department. If I had to pick a favorite, I think Eorzea just about beats it out on account that
Based
I think
on
I
this
preferred
picture
the
alone,
food
I
and
agree.
drinks on their menu just a bit
Big
more than
Hans.
the Monster Hunter one. The steak was middling, and
Fruit
the
jar.
chicken katsu, although good, I feel I could get chicken katsu like it anywhere. So why was I saving my appetite? Well, because an hour after our time at Monster Hunter was finished, we needed to get to the Kirby Cafe by the Sky Tree. Because that was literally the only time we were able to nab when reservations opened up. I remember staying up at 3 a.m. to help Echo book this thing and having two
I
or
did
three
something
of our
like
selections
this
immediately
prior to a
getting
trip to
snatched
Disney
up
World
by
recently,
someone
so this
before
was
we
like
finally got
it
one.
was giving
We
me a little bit of
tried
agita.
to book a 3-person seat so Emily could be included, but every single 3-person slot was booked immediately. And I mean immediately. Not to mention, you have to include your name in Japanese. So Echo and I were frantically trying to translate our names so that we could type it out in katakana. It was probably the most stress our relationship has ever been under. Thankfully, we did secure the spot, but the only time slot we could safely grab was unfortunately only 2 hours after the Monster Hunter Cafe, and we weren't able to include Emily, who is very understanding and didn't mind.
So sweet.
Thank you for your sacrifice so that we could enjoy Kirby. So off we went, walking fast, curb-bound to the subway.
All right, that little part right there, walking fast, curb bound to the subway, such a small little part of the video. It took me a very long time to translate because I really wanted to get the curb bound pun into the Japanese, and Japanese loves puns. The Japanese language really loves puns, but they're really hard to replicate into Japanese. They're very, very difficult to replicate into Japanese in a way that makes sense in both English and Japanese. And so this is what I came up with down here at the bottom. So, chikatetsu ni mukabite ikimashita. So, mukatte ikimashita is like to go around an area, to kind of like circumnavigate. And so I like, as hard as I possibly could, I shoved kabi into there so that it came out mukabite ikimashita. Just so that I could have that little tiny Kirby pun. Does it make perfect sense? Absolutely not. Did it make me very, very happy with myself that I managed to shove it in there? Very, very much so.
On the bright side, the trip had very few to no interruptions, and we actually managed to make it there early. We got a seat inside not too long after, and this place, although small, was
everything
very
I
cute.
translated
At the front, we got to
for
take
the Final
pictures with a
Fantasy
giant
part,
plate while
I
wielding a
felt like I
giant
had a
fork and
leg
spoon
up
next to
because I
Chef
know a
Kirby
lot of
Waddle Dee,
Final
and
Fantasy
decorating the
terms.
center of the cafe
I
was
don't know
Wispy
Kirby.
Woods, the most
I
beat-up
really
Kirby boss
don't.
of all time.
This whole
My
part
favorite
was
of the cafe
tough for
was the
me.
atmosphere. Some jazzy Kirby tracks were being played all the while we were there.
It's cute. I just don't know this game.
For our our meals, Echo ordered the Waddle Dee lunchbox, which had a salmon and avocado rice bowl, while I had the Kirby lunchbox, which
Cute
was another rice
presentation.
bowl, but with hamburger steaks and lots of veggies.
It doesn't look
I
like
split it
something
with
I would
Echo because
love.
I didn't quite like half the contents of the bowl, and I may not have been the only one because it's apparently a beef bowl now instead, which I would have much preferred. Thankfully, it wasn't the only thing I had to eat, as I ordered the Kirby burger that came with pasta and corn potash. The pasta and corn potash were good. The burger was not.
So I translated this as the burger was oishiku nakatta. The burger was undelicious. It was undelicious.
The bun was and the meat tasted dry. Echo said the salmon and avocado bowl was the best restaurant food she had ever had. But now, we faced a new problem. Having eaten at 2 cafes in just a few hours, we were stuffed. But Echo was determined to not leave until she had a dessert. We almost got the Kirby cake, but it was strawberry flavored and I am not a fan, so Echo would have had to eat the whole thing herself, which was not happening. She got the Kirby's fluffy pancakes instead, which was still strawberry, but far more manageable for one person. I helped a bit with the sides though.
Okay, this is another funny little misunderstanding that I had. When I first saw the script, I'm going through the script. Again, haven't seen the video yet, so I totally thought he meant I helped with the sides of the pancake, right? And so I had actually originally translated this as I ate the edges of the pancake, and I wasn't quite sure why that was, but I wasn't going to judge it. Like, okay, you ate the sides of the pancake, great. Once I had the video and I saw clearly the meaning was the side dishes, and so I had to change this to eating the sides.
Echo says it was okay, but no regrets. And then, it was off to the gift shop, which had tons of adorable Kirby memorabilia. And most importantly, Kirby gachapon. Overall, it was a pretty good cafe, but I feel the food, at least aside from a few standout dishes, could have been better. The change in menu items since we've been there probably indicates that they were thinking or being told the same
It's
thing.
very much
What also
probably a
was nice
cafe
about
that
Kirby
brings
Cafe
people
is that
in
it was
just because
directly
of its
connected to
theme
the
and not
Skytree
because of
Mall,
its
to
food.
the point, the exit out of the gift shop leads directly into the mall itself. So we browsed the mall a bit,
Green,
made some
green,
impulse
green.
purchases, walked off 2 cafes, worth of
Blue!
food, and overall had a nice time out. Back-to-back experiences aside, I'm still glad we got to do them both. At some point, while we were hanging out with Emily,
This is
there
my
was a
favorite part of the
conversation
whole
along the
video.
lines of,
Oh, Echo, you like Sanrio? Are you planning to visit the Cinema Roll Cafe?
There's a cinema roll cafe?
So, today we went to the Cinema Roll Cafe in the Shinjuku Mall. It was a walk-in, so no
It's
reservations
so
needed. It was also
cute. It just
fairly
makes me
small,
wanna
not very
cry.
packed, so we were able to get seating fairly quickly. Sitting all around the cafe were some cute little Cinema Roll plushes, which gave me anxiety, considering there were some very stain-prone food around, and the boy's basically a canvas waiting to be painted on. Regardless, I got the spaghetti with meat sauce that was apparently a collaboration at the time with Totonu Konu, who is apparently a character from the manga Don't Call It a Mystery.
I had to do
I have
so
no
much
idea what the
research
manga is about.
on
I'm
this
only learning
manga
about this
for
now
this
as I'm writing
translation.
the script. Echo, meanwhile, got the blue curry in the sky, which was a pretty basic rice and curry dish with a few bits of meat thrown in. For drinks, I got
Yeah,
some
I
sort
feel
of
the same
blue
way, Ellie.
drink,
I've been to
which
a lot
I
of
cannot
themed
for the life of
cafes, and
me
it's
find
like
what it
it's
was
not
called,
there
but
for
I
the
remember
food.
it being
It's
okay.
there
While
because
Echo got
you're
this mustache
you're
drink, the
you're
Vienna
buying
coffee.
the
We also both got a
experience.
dessert since we didn't really have anywhere else to be that day, so might as well. I got a stack of pancakes while Echo got a parfait. Basically, all the
Parfait.
food at this cafe
Nihongo
was
de
really,
parfait.
really good. So props to the cooks. There was an
Parfait are
adorable
everywhere
little
in
corner merch
Japan.
store
I
that
don't
had a
really
load
understand
of
why,
role-themed
but they're
items,
very
and
popular.
I had to hold Echo back from grabbing just about everything off of the shelves.
It was a humble little cafe that was nice enough to stop for food.
I want to
Now,
go.
after we were done,
I wanna
though,
go.
it was
Someone
time
take
for
me.
our special thing. So I mentioned earlier that Echo was collecting the 100 yen coins each time we got change. It wasn't just to make some of our transactions a nice even amount, although we did do that sometimes, but more specifically,
Iron
to
Mouse
save
spotted.
them all for one very important thing.
That Japanese translated there is 非常に重要な料理だ. It's like a massively important task. And what is that important task?
What is my purpose?
Gachapon. Let's go!
I love it. I love it. Parfait they feel fancy and they're very customizable.
Today
Yeah,
was
you're
our
probably right.
designated gachapon day, where we would be spending pretty much all of our saved up change. About 20,000.
Thank you for that,
yens worth.
JoCat. I was doing the math in my head of trying to figure out how much money that was, and then JoCat put that there. So thank you.
Half of the day was dedicated to feeding gachapon machines and collecting their precious little toy poops.
Toy
we were
poops.
ecologists on the hunt, and our quarry
I
was a
liked
wilderness
translating
of
this
plastic.
sentence
We
quite a
bounced
lot.
around both the Shinjuku Mall
It
and the
excited
arcades
me.
in Akihabara, basically until there were no more machines we were interested in. And we got loads of cute little things that will forever decorate our house and accessories.
And become
Once we did
crab.
have our fill of choking hazards, the wallet abuse was not over. You see, we were at an arcade. And although the gachapon was no longer interesting us, the various prize games
I translated this as, even though we had lost interest in gachapon, the various prize machines had become easy targets for us. So I liked the vibe of we're continuing our little war here.
were still ripe. And not to brag, but I was a master of crane games. On more than one occasion, I managed to first try prizes that were giving Echo tons of trouble. What can I say? I have magic fingers. It was a good day, and makes
Round
me wish
meat.
we had these kinds of arcades in America.
I want this meat.
It's such a cute meme.
Oh, that grr, I translated it as where did it go? Gao, gao in Japanese. Gao is the noise that you think about it like dads making monster noises at kids, like "Go, I'm gonna get you," and that's how I translated this. I thought it was really funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
It only took 5.
Oh, it's so
Yay,
cute. Look,
round
you can
meat.
take them bone out.
They had a lot of
Oh, that's
excited
Yes, I was gonna
noises
say
that I
that
wanted
one.
to translate
Very
throughout
instinctive.
a lot of this. And I had to kind of keep from doing the same one over and over so that I could get some good rotation in there.
All throughout our trip, we often would stop by any restaurant we'd come by that looked interesting to get food. Unfortunately, sometimes that can be playing Russian roulette with your stomach. And because of this, at some point, I had unknowingly
I think I
eaten
translated
something
Russian roulette as
bad,
just
and I
dangerous
got
instead of
food
translating it as
poisoning,
Russian roulette.
which laid me out for nearly the whole week. I would spend the
Yeah,
following
Kiken,
4
just
days
danger,
in bed,
so
doing nothing
could be
but
very
sleeping
dangerous.
and occasionally messing up the bathroom.
But not me. This is my video now.
So from here, for the narration, I switched over to Watashi because Echo is
I
narrating.
went to Daiso and I got a bunch of meds to try and help him feel better because there wasn't much I could do to heal him otherwise. So I decided to go out and have a girl day. That way he could just have the room to himself. I went to an IKEA and I got a hamper. I also went to Don Quixote, which is this huge superstore where I got some really cool colored
Very cool
contacts.
store.
But then at one point my phone nearly died, so I had to hunt down a McDonald's specifically so I could charge it because I know they have outlets and charging stations. Once I felt like my phone was charged enough that I could use Google Maps to get home, I made my way out to the train station, and then halfway there, I realized that I forgot my bag.
So we actually had to change this after the video came out because I hadn't realized that what she's about to say here is I realized I had forgot my bag, my contacts, and everything I had just bought at the McDonald's. And I misinterpreted this. Like, my bad as a translator. I misinterpreted that as I forgot my bag, my contacts, and I forgot everything that I had just purchased from McDonald's. But of course, she hadn't bought anything from McDonald's. So after the video was already out, we had to go back and go, no, that's not right. She forgot her bag, her contacts and everything that she had just bought prior to going to McDonald's, but where did she forget it? At the McDonald's. And so I had to make a change to the translation so that I could say that everything was all forgotten at the McDonald's, but nothing was actually bought at the McDonald's.
My contacts and everything that I just bought at the McDonald's. So I took off running back to the McDonald's, desperately hoping that no one stole all of my stuff. It was all exactly where I left it. Should I explain what the big poo is here?
No.
So in Japan, actually, people call it the kin no unko, the golden turd. We'll see what that is later. They're calling it here the big poo, but I've always heard it kin no unko. And so I didn't know which way I wanted to do it. I could have done it just in katakana, just big poo, but I ended up putting kin no unko here. And I think JoCat agreed with me that since that's the way most people kind of know it, it's kind of like relatively popular way to make fun of the big golden thing.
Okay.
We'll
I also
see
went out
later.
and I scouted
There
the
it
Big
is.
Poo, also known
That's
as
that's
Asahi
the
Beer Hall, for
Kino
some
Unko.
super secret plans I have later.
Scoot. So yeah, I was out of commission
Scoot.
for 4 days.
Scoot. Scoot. This is 1 nanosecond of video that again took me forever to translate. So I didn't know how I wanted to handle Scoot, because it's such a small little throwaway line. I proposed as an idea. I thought, and I talked to JoCat about this, that I would say "deteke," which is kind of like, it's almost so like vulgar that it comes across almost as like dangerous. And I would really translate it as "get the fuck out," right? I hope I can say that, or if we fall far enough into the video that I can say that. It is pretty mean. It's like GTFO, right? And I also said, like, you could say "doite." Doite is another like moderately rude. Doite, get out of my way. But I did get like, yeah, it's basically "move, bish." Yeah. But as I was watching through the video again, like, it was just the vibe that I got that I felt like it worked for the video. It worked for the vibe that I felt it was going for. So I went with Deteke.
To the point we basically had to cancel any plans we had for that week.
So sweet. It's so
Another
sweet.
day for me to rest. And although it did suck that I basically had to give up a couple of days of this vacation, we even had to cancel going to a ramen festival we had planned. What really sucked on top of it all was the weight loss. I've never really shared this part of myself publicly because it's
This
kind of
is
an
legit the
insecurity of
first
mine,
part
but
of the video that brought
I've
me to
always had
tears.
a hard time staying at a healthy weight. I used to be underweight fairly often as a kid, and although
This
I'm
part
doing a lot
wasn't
better
hard
now,
to
I'm still a
translate. It was
decent
just
few
hard
pounds
to
short of
get
where I'd like
through
to be.
without crying.
It doesn't help that my main job involves sitting at a computer
Felt.
for hours, and my main hobby involves sitting in front of a television for hours.
Felt.
And I just picked up another hobby that involves me sitting at a craft desk.
Felt. Also, I really have to shout out here my friend Sonia, who also paints minis, and like I see JoCat's painting here, and I'm like, this is so good. But I also see my friend Sonia's painting, and I'm like, y'all are so talented. It just makes me, oh my gosh, it just makes me like jealous. I'm so jealous of your ability to paint. I took up painting minis a while back. I still do terrain. I like painting terrain. I'm not crazy about painting minis. I have just a little bit of a vital tremor, and so it's a little bit hard for me to paint like really small details. But like Ellie's saying, yeah, terrain is a lot of fun. Terrain is easier for me because it's a lot more broad strokes and not so many like itty bitty teeny tiny details. With my little puppy paws, it's hard for me to paint those really small details.
For hours. I sit around a lot. But since our trip began, I had been eating 3 to 4 meals a day regularly, walking everywhere, going up and down stairs all the time, carrying around all our prizes and souvenirs. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it was a workout, but it
It's
definitely
rough,
put
Ellie.
me on a
I'm-
healthier routine. And
Yeah,
I
you're
actually
right.
started to
Practice
gain
does
some
make
healthy
perfect.
weight,
And
which
I
is
do
why
still
it was
paint.
extra
Like
sad
I
that
paint
while
on
I was resting
canvases
up,
and things like
I
that.
could only
So
stomach eating like 2 crackers for a given day.
speaking of
because anything
crackers,
else
I have a
would've
cracker right here.
been too much for me.
Cracker, cracker.
And
I'm
so
going to eat
I
you.
had lost a lot of
Nom,
the
nom.
weight that I had gained, which was kind of sad.
Why not exercise at home?
Gotchi. Gnawing noises.
Today I was feeling marginally better, but a bit under the weather still. We finally got beef bowl, which I am still surprised it took that long to finally stop by a place, considering I would tug at
Gyudon
Echo
is
each time
so
we passed by,
popular.
asking if we could go, please.
Sukiya is like one of the most famous ones. I can't eat it, of course, but there's gyudon and there's also oyakodon, which is also really popular. I'm eating a cracker, so my mouth is full.
Please. And I'm not kidding. Tied with the Yakitori place, beef bowl is probably my #1 favorite thing to eat ever. To the point we proceeded to go there the next 3 days in a row. I love it so much. We now make beef bowl at home in America, and although it's not nearly as good, I still love it. Beef bowl, my beloved. Since I was feeling almost back to 100%, we decided to celebrate. We would spend the day at the arcade. And can I just go on another happy tangent real quick?
I had a really hard time with another happy tangent. I didn't really know how to handle that in Japanese. And so I translated this as, can I digress and share a quick happy thing?
And say, I love Japanese arcades. Sure, we have a few back home in the US, and they're fine and all, but
Ross and Giwi.
something about the fact so many of the ones in Japan have prizes attached. I don't know, I want more of them. Echo too, maybe even more so. It's kind of dangerous. We spent so much time and energy
Abunai,
trying to
dangerous.
get this one bunny suit Chika Fujiwara. We don't even watch or read Love is War. Echo just really wanted it and got so tantalizingly close. But we ultimately gave up when we had spent a collective 30 tries, which probably amounted to the same amount of money it would have cost just to buy the figure. But to Echo, it wasn't about the figure. It was never about the figure.
This was
It was
fun
about
to
winning.
translate. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
What I personally love about the arcades is they almost always had a taiko machine. And I love taiko. I love rhythm games, but especially taiko. Something about having physical sticks to bang the drums. Plus, whoever's in charge of licensing the music for the game did a fantastic job because they have banger after certified banger.
I wish I could translate certified banger in a way that made any sense in Japanese. I couldn't. I just translated it as great track after wonderful track, but Japanese needs certified banger.
Klonoa tracks in there.
We need to
That's how
get
you
that
know
into
it's
the
a good
Japanese
game.
lexicon somehow.
One thing I feel
This also
important
made
to
me
mention,
cry.
I've been talking positively about my and Echo's experiences so far, because it was positive. But make no mistake, we have no delusions that Japan is some perfect paradise. Like any country, it has its own social, economic, and political issues. Its work culture, its rocky history with women and LGBT people, the state of its economy, and that these are problems that Japanese people are entirely aware of as well. I'm not
That's
bringing anything
hilarious.
new to the table
All right,
here.
we have
I
created
personally don't
certified
feel
banger.
informed or qualified enough to speak on them, as I'm just a foreigner. I am by no means trying to romanticize Japan.
I feel
I'm
this a
also
lot
not trying
too.
to say that
Like as a Japanese teacher, this is also really hard for me because I'm a non-native and I'm a non-native speaker, and yet I teach Japanese and I teach Japanese culture, and it can sometimes be really hard for me to convey these ideas in a way that is kind of neither hurtful for Japanese culture nor hurtful for American culture. It's a really difficult balance. And I often have to stop myself and think, as I'm writing my scripts for my videos, what do I want to say in a way that doesn't come across as, in some way hurtful or insensitive? I think that's it's very important to consider those things, and I really, really appreciate what JoCat does here. It means a lot just to kind of acknowledge, like, I'm not perfect. I don't know these things.
America is that much better either. We got our own problems, and some of this is the pot calling the kettle black. I lived the first 11 years of my life in an Asian country. I know firsthand what differences in culture a few thousand miles of land can be. We just wanted to enjoy that freshness of a different culture for a bit before returning to our normal lives. Not trying to say anything more than that. But I just wanted to mention that somewhere in here, in case people got the wrong idea that this video is Japan good, America bad.
Today was a very special day for Echo because we were finally going to Sakaido, which is a massive art supply and stationery store, where I had to hunt her down several times because she kept escaping to look at another random part of the store. And who could
It's
blame
a
her? This place
beautiful
was
store.
full of so many tempting supplies to grab. Hell, I haven't touched anything traditional in years, and I still fell victim to the allure of shiny new art supplies.
Sketchbook
And
you will
so
never
I grabbed
use.
some
I didn't
cute
notice
little
that before
stamps,
now.
sketchbooks, and even had a few reference books for poses and outfit designs. This one's my favorite.
This
Building
one's my
itself was
favorite.
structured into having several floors, each floor specifically
Korewa
containing
ichiban
a
suki
certain
no-
kind of art supply.
Oh,
My
I think I
bottom
put
floor
a
was
little
for
smile
stamps,
in there
stickers, and
too. I put a
sketchbooks. The next
kusa.
floor would be something like
So if I remember correctly, I put a kusa in the Japanese subs there. So the funny thing about kusa is that originally, like, kusa just means like grass, but smile is warao, and warao can make like a happy face in Japanese. And it actually kind of does look also like a happy face because warao has little like eyebrows and little eyes and a little thing that kind of looks like a smile, the kanji for it. So warao gets used in Japanese like text a whole lot. Yep. And when you have a lot of it together, you can just use W as Ellie is showing here. So you can just have WW, and that can just mean smiling because you're just putting the W from warao. Tons of them together are WWWWW, which apparently looks like grass to people. And so lots of W's became kusa, which is just smile.
paper of various
lol.
weights, thickness, and material. And the next floor would be all pens, pencils, scissors, and paper guillotines. It was an artist's wallet's nightmare. If you want to see specifically each and every item we got, and also a few more art stuff we came across just during our stay, Echo actually has a video going through each and every one of them. It was about this time
Please
as well
follow
that
Echo
we were
as well.
thinking,
Please
despite
follow them
coming
both.
here
Please,
with plenty
please,
of
please
space
follow
in
them
one of our
both.
suitcases for
I
all
beg
the stuff
you,
we wanted
subscribe,
to take back home, with
like,
how
subscribe
heavy all our things were getting and how much
to
space
them.
it was all taken up, we would likely need to buy another one. And eventually
Yeah,
did.
that's a
But
really good
thankfully,
way
we
to
only
deal
needed
with
that
it,
one.
Ellie. Like a snickering sound.
Today was real special, though
Kusu,
not
kusu, kusu.
one that we planned. So Echo really wanted to go to the Asahi Beer Hall. Asahi being one of the largest drink producing companies in Japan. Think the Coca-Cola company.
This is
or
another
PepsiCo if
one
they also-
where I had to switch things around a little bit. So the ultimate translation that I gave is Asahi is the largest Japanese beverage company in Japan, but it's also as well known as Coca-Cola or Pepsi, but additionally produces alcoholic beverages. So I had to switch things around because it just wasn't coming out in the Japanese the way I wanted it to.
So produced alcoholic drinks. They're also responsible for my new favorite drink of all time now, Melon Cream Calpis Soda, which I would have to grab anytime I saw it in a vending machine, no matter what. Seriously, if anyone knows how I can get this in the US, please tell me.
I'm under the
Anyway,
impression that
being
he's
such a
now
massive
found it,
company,
so-
they have a couple of massive buildings in Sumida by the
Just
river,
so you know.
which are supposed to symbolize a tall glass of beer and what I assume to be a shot glass with foam whisking over the top of it.
I also
tapping
don't
together
see
for a
it. I don't
cheers.
see it.
And yeah, it's supposed to look like foam. At least that's the intention, but
Okay, so everywhere else in the video, I have had name with a colon and then the speaker, right? So if Echo was talking, I had Echo speaking. If JoCat was talking, I had Joe colon speaker. There's nothing here because in the original script, I don't think JoCat knew who was speaking here. It's probably either Shen or Echo according to the original script, but so you know, there's nothing here because It is unknown. The speaker here is unknown.
Echo wanted to go to the Sky Room, a restaurant they had at the very tippy top of the beer glass, which has a gorgeous view of Tokyo. The food there was okay, nothing mind-blowing, but a pleasant enough meal. I had a sausage link and some pizza, while Echo got a couple of alcoholic drinks because she was very nervous for some reason. And it was there, while we were enjoying our food, looking out over the beautiful Tokyo skyline, that I was thinking out loud.
At least it sounds like
This would've been a
Shen.
great place for me to propose. Sorry I don't have a ring, but we'll consider this our engagement trip if that's okay.
Okay, so now I'm gonna cry again. I've cried every time I've watched this.
Kinda sweet, so
It's so sweet.
no sandwich to pair with. Lower than a side dish, no deep fry that I call mine.
So sweet.
My heart is like a jar of capers, a ball of salt that won't go by itself.
I've just realized that they've recreated the buildings. They've recreated the Asahi building is right here. And I hadn't even realized that before. You've got a tall one and you've got a shot glass looking one.
Pasta
It's so sweet.
compliment, contemplating time spent sitting on the market shelf.
So yeah, Echo proposed to me right then and there. Look it, we took pictures. A place we would highly recommend if you're ever in Tokyo. Thank you, Asahi Sky Room.
So sweet.
We wandered the city a bit more, and when we were hungry again, decided to stop by a ramen place at the recommendation of my best friend, buddy, pal, friendo, Shenpai. Hey, look at that, you're in the video 2 times in a row. It was called Ichiran, and it was located in Shibuya. the
I've
big
never
city.
been to
It
Ichiran.
was quite a long line when we got there too, but when you go in, they assign you a seat along this lineup, where each person has their own little space to eat ramen. And in the center is where they took your order to prep food. They give you a little paper menu where you get to pick your noodle
This is
size,
fairly
firmness,
common
how much broth you want,
in
the
Japan.
concentration of the broth, how many contents of food you want in it, the works. And I know I've said this a lot for a lot of the food here in Japan, but this is the best noodle dish I have ever eaten in my life. Thank you.
I had
so
fun
much, Shen,
translating noodle dish
for
there.
recommending this place.
It's kind of
Echo and
interesting.
I were lamenting on the verge of tears, recalling this part to write for the video because the noodles were just that good. Speaking of food, today Echo wanted to go to a very specific onigiri place called Onigiri Bongo in
Onigiri
Toshima,
Bongo.
which was a bit out of the ways from where we were staying, but Echo insisted we had to go. And she wasn't the only one, because when we got there, there was a
I dropped she wasn't the only one here, so I translated this as this place was apparently very popular, and then when we got there, there was such a long line to get in that it was even longer than the ramen restaurant that we went to before. So I thought the ramen restaurant was really long, and this one was even longer.
hefty line to get in.
Like, we thought the ramen place was long. This was long.
This place had a reputation for being probably the best onigiri place around. And you could tell because we got there at around early evening time, and by the time we finally made it in, the sun was gone. And credit to them, the rice balls were absolutely delicious. Was it worth waiting several hours? Echo thinks
I
so.
wonder if they have anything
She sure
vegetarian.
does. She says it was worth it. That's what Echo says. I'm not saying they weren't delicious. Probably the best onigiri I have ever had. Would I be willing to wait the 2 to 3 hours again? We'll be ordering online next time.
So cute.
The final special planned event for our trip, the Ghibli Museum, which we weren't able to get any pictures for since they had a no camera policy once you were inside the building. We were able to take some of the outside, which still looked beautiful. what with all
Ghibli
the greenery and
daisuki,
overgrowth around the
daisuki
building.
o.
If you don't know Studio Ghibli, yes you do, shut up liar. Inside were various
I enjoyed
rooms
translating
and
that
displays
too.
of the process the studio
Usotsuki.
goes through to make their
Usotsuki
films,
means liar.
including entire
Usotsuki.
albums of concept art, individual frames of animations, and even recreations of Hayao Miyazaki's office. The whole building was laid out like a cozy building from one of their films. Very whimsical, very colorful, very dense with detail and clutter. And plenty of activities for kids too, including a fluffy cat bus play place, which I was kind of envious. I kind of wished that I could go into, but I'm too big. It was for kids. So we just kind of watched them have fun.
Okay. I'm not going to go too in depth about this, but I will say that this changed from my original translation because there used to be another line that came after this. So this used to be broken down into two different parts, and without going into too much detail, the translation came out a little bit creepy. My translation came out just a little bit creepy. And so ultimately it got changed, and I'm glad it didn't get, it got changed a little bit because it was a little weird. But yeah, but it is really, really sweet. Just, yeah. Oh, too big.
Fun. There was a section of the museum all about the illusion of animation itself. It was a dark room with various rotating dioramas, old film machines, just a bunch of cool
I
old
wanna
tech
go
that would have
back.
been used to make animations
I wanna
before
go
the
back.
streamlining of digital media came along. And at the very back of the building, they even had a theater for attendees to watch a cute little short film about two children, a human and a rabbit, and their rivalry over a playground area. This is gonna sound cheesy, but that signature Ghibli vibe, the atmosphere, the feeling of whimsy and nostalgia and childhood wonder was just about everywhere in the building. And that includes the cafe outside as well.
Ghibli
the Ghibli Museum
daisuki
has
yo.
its own themed cafe, the Straw Hat Cafe, which was...
It's
I
kinda
didn't
mid.
really like the food. I think the only thing that looked good to me were the french fries, which were extremely unflavored and soft. But whatever, that wasn't really a place to get lunch anyway. Regardless though, the museum itself was a great experience, and we got to keep our tickets as a souvenir, which each one was a few frames of film from one of the movies. Look, I got a bunch of fish. I think it's from Ponyo. That's the only movie that exists with fish in it.
I really did translate that as, that is the only movie in existence with fish. I'm sure that's not the way that it was meant, but I couldn't help myself.
This was our last full day in Japan, and we wanted to take care of a couple of last things. Firstly, we wanted to dispose of all of our plastic containers from the accumulated gachapon that we had played. So we hauled a massive plastic bag full of them, went to the Skytree, and deposited them into one of these large recycling stations that would have given us special bonus gachapon pulls if only our phones were Japanese and worked with the
I
app that we
had this
needed.
problem
Alas,
so
we were content with
often
just plain old
in
recycling. For now.
in rural
Secondly, we
Japan.
needed to pack
You
our
have
stuff,
so
and
many
thankfully,
phone
with
problems.
The extra bag we grabbed, we were able to
It's a
fit
huge
just
issue.
about everything without too much trouble. Third, there was a place I wanted to go to finish some business I had started. You see, in the Eorzea Cafe, they stamp this little card for each drink you order, and once you reach a certain amount, you get a reward. In my case, pin of one of the, at the time, 7 main city hubs. And so
I don't think that I got at the time in this translation. Looking at it, so. I didn't capture. It was one of the 7 main hubs at the time. So that just didn't make it into the translation for some reason. But yeah, I got one pen of one of the 7 main hubs.
and I ordered some drinks, chugging them down like we were grinding for an achievement, and managed to reach the reward and nab a pin, which I decided to go
I think I
for
just
the
translated as
objectively best city hub, the
furiously chugging them
Crystarium
down.
from Shadowbringers. And you can disagree,
But you're wrong.
And lastly, we wanted to stop by our favorite bar one last time. In Japan, there's a tradition called omiyage. Basically,
Omiyage
giving a
culture
host
is
or
really
coworkers
important.
small,
Very,
usually
very
inexpensive
important.
souvenirs as mementos from a trip. We wanted to give the people of the Yakitori place some items we had brought from the US. An American dollar, some ranch, and scented candles from
The ranch makes me laugh so much. I cannot stop laughing about the ranch.
Louisiana. We actually brought quite a few things for this tradition, mostly for the place we were staying at, but this Yakitori restaurant left such an impact on us, we thought it necessary to give our thanks there as well.
That's very sweet and wouldn't be something that you would normally do, but it's very, very, very adorable.
It was time to go home, and as such, we had to do something we never had to do the entirety of our trip. We had to get in a car. Yeah, much as we probably could have walked our way to the airport using the metro, we didn't want to have to haul our luggage all the way up and down so many stairs again, so we grabbed an Uber and got an extremely polite and friendly driver who spoke English incredibly well, much as he would hesitate to ever admit himself. He even offered to take care of our heavy luggage and was surprised and seemed to panic a bit when we were so eager and ready to load it ourselves, not wanting to inconvenience him. As we were saying goodbye to Tokyo, he made the drive so pleasant and calming. It was nice to have a full conversation with a Japanese person as the final capstone thing.
That was one of the few times that I would use sayonara in Japanese. Sayonara I think a lot of like basic level Japanese classes will teach you sayonara, meaning goodbye, but sayonara has like a real tone of finality to it. Like it is goodbye. I may never see you again. In fact, even the word sayonara kind of means like if it must be so. So you're parting with somebody and you're saying, ah, if I may never see you again, so be it. And so I decided to use sayonara here for while we were saying goodbye to Japan, because it just felt like it felt really important to me. Like this really is a moment when they're leaving, they're saying goodbye to this place that has meant so much to them. And you never know, right? You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. So they don't know. They hope that they're going to be coming back. But yeah, you're right, Ellie. Sayonara is not see you later. So that'd be mata ne, ja mata ne, or something like that. But yeah, sayonara is like I'm leaving and I might not ever see you again. Culturally, like, what does that really mean? Uh, you could talk about like the Legend of the Five Rings and stuff like that. Legend of the Five Rings. What am I talking about? No. Um, Code of the Bushido is the book that I'm thinking of, which talks about constantly keeping in mind that you could die at any moment. But I think, really, sayonara is such a very important word. In Japanese, I have personally said sayonara only to maybe 5 or 6 people in my life, and it was only because like I felt so strongly about how they had impacted me, and I didn't know if I would ever see them again. And if I'm being entirely honest with you, of the 5 or 6 people that I have said sayonara to, most of them I never saw again. Like it's pretty serious. And so I wanted to capture that in my translation.
We did on a trip, like a host asking us if the stay was satisfactory. I'll never forget how happy he was to hear that we had a good time staying in Tokyo. For the second time this trip, a middle-aged Japanese man single-handedly repaired my house, solved my finances, and rebooted my favorite franchise.
So same thing again here. I wanted to be so careful that I go ahead and capture these ideas, but I wanted to make certain that it was really distinct and really clear that these are different people and that these are good things that happen, and as a result, um, that was good. Like, I don't know if it comes across to a Japanese speaker that these aren't like real things, that this taxi driver didn't actually reboot Halo. I hope it comes across with the visual element, but if I were translating this without the visual element, I definitely would not have translated it this way. With the visual element, I think it maybe comes across that like he fixed my house and he rebooted my franchise and all of this thing. But yeah. Anyway,
I love him. He dropped us off
Kara
at the airport
daisuki.
and was kind enough to even load our luggage onto some trolleys.
I
which
should
was
I should stop here. I'm sorry, I keep stopping. I should stop and talk about the difference between daisuki and aishiteru. Aishiteru is like romantic love, but it's pretty rare in Japanese. So when you say I love him, or JoCat says I love him, I would not use aishiteru for that, like at all. Because a lot of like even couples, even married couples, will kind of rarely say aishiteru. So I went with daisuki.
a surprise to us. Geez, these are so convenient. Why don't we ever use the airport trolleys back home? We checked our bags, hustled through security, waited in a building with a very yawning.
Okay. The Yannick part. The Yannick part. All right. So JoCat and I had to have a whole conversation about this, because talking about the Japanese, the female's genitals in Japanese is very different. There's a cultural taboo around talking about genitals at all, particularly female genitals. And so I offered 3 different translations. So one of those translations would have been basically it comes across like a lady's instrument, which is one way that you can kind of get across this. It's a little bit more clinical, but also kind of metaphorical. So a lady's stuff that she's doing things with. I also gave a very, very, very clinical, like super, like medical speak term for female genitals, and I don't think that that would have come across well at all. But I think that the one that we ultimately went with was the one that it made it sound like a drawstring purse, which is kind of like an 18th century poetry term, a drawstring purse. And if you remember the cinema roll coin pouch that they had, that's kind of the image that you're getting, right? So you have a flat purse that allows, you know, something to be held inside, but then when you pinch the sides, it would kind of split open a little bit. You can use your own imagination to think about how that looks, and that's why we use this idea of a drawstring purse in Japanese to talk about things that are yonic.
Ceiling, and then we flew back. That was it. We said goodbye to Japan. It was a good trip. I look forward to going back someday soon.
So cute.
The trolley is $7.
I got to put fuck in there at the very end. I was able to put fuck in Japanese, and I'm so happy that I was able to put that, because it's not a word that you can shoehorn in very easily. Japanese is not a language that's built for curses very well at all, so being able to get fuck into my translation made me very, very happy. So that was it. I love this video. I'm gonna be honest and say I was so stunningly humbled to be able to work on this. It just made me really, really happy. And working on it, looking at it, thinking about it, and ultimately translating it was just like, I don't want to blow this out of proportion, but it was kind of one of the like highlight moments of my life to be able to do this, to be able to work on it. It just made me feel so fulfilled in a way that, you know, like with my daily job, I'm a translator. I translate all the time. I translate 6 days a week practically. It is my full-time job. So in addition to everything else that I do on YouTube, everything else that I do on Twitch, I translate all the time. But one of the things that I find about my current job is that when I translate something, oftentimes I hand it off to the person and I say, here's your translation, here's what you needed, here's the information for you, and they say thanks and they leave, and I never get to see any kind of after effect, right? I never get to see anybody reading it. I never get to see anybody interacting with it. I never kind of get to feel any kind of impact from the work that I do. So I work very, very hard. I work hard to get good translations out there. I do a lot to do a good job, and then I let it go, and I never get to see it again. And one of the things that has made working on this video with JoCat kind of one of the highlights of my life is that I can now go into the comments and see people commenting on it and saying that they can understand the video because they're seeing the Japanese subtitles. And that kind of makes my heart burst with just happiness and joy and so much just warmth, to know that I'm definitely having an impact. You know, this isn't like some, you know, document that I've translated and handed off and might get filed away somewhere and maybe never ever gets looked at. People are going to see this video. 400,000 people have seen this video ostensibly, and it just made me feel useful it made me feel useful in a way that I don't normally get to feel, because I just do my job and I try to do a good job, and then people kind of forget about me, and that's okay. You know, that is what it is. That's the nature of the job. But I'm just really glad that I got this chance and that I could feel like I had an impact. So it's a really wonderful feeling, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy for JoCat and Echo. They are heckin' adorable, and I'm so happy for them. And yeah, I really thank you for watching this reaction. This is gonna go up on YouTube. If anybody has any questions about anything, has questions about how I handled the translation, if you watch this video and you think I would really like to know more about why she made some of the decisions that she made, by all means, leave me a comment, message me. My business email is also on YouTube. Just let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what your questions are. Let me know if you want to know more about what it's like to be a translator, because I would love to pass on that knowledge, because that's what I do. I teach and I translate, and I love Japanese. So everybody, I hope you have a good afternoon. I hope you have a good evening. I hope you take care of yourselves, and I love you. So until next time, mata ne.